Study session regular meeting for June 28th to order. Mr. Hosmer is the only board member who could not be here tonight. If you'll please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple of very impressive groups to recognize tonight. I'll call on Dr. Ritter.
Yes, it's exciting again. Central does it, and I'd like to have Dr. Harrell come to the stand to introduce these special celebrations.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Very excited to be here this evening. We do have Dr. Ron Snodgrass from Central High School and Miss Nicole Lemon, who is our Central Intelligence teacher and sponsor at Central High School, to talk about some recent awards, including some new national awards and national Emmys, and to celebrate some of the students that she has with her this evening. So with that, I'll have Dr. Snodgrass and Miss Lemon come up.
Thank you once again for having us this evening. We've had a very successful year since I've seen you last. We recently won 4 National Spring Student Television Awards and then 6 more Emmy Awards, bringing our total Emmy count now to 18. So that's very exciting for us. We will be representing Central and Springfield Public Schools at the Emmy Gala again in October. So we always look forward to doing that. Joining me tonight are Yoonji Kim and Hallie Bruton. Both of whom have had great success this year, including 4 national awards. They almost completely swept the spring sports category, and they also picked up, finally, their Emmy Award, so we're very proud of them. Tonight I want to give special recognition to Hallie. She's in the class of 2011, so I'm very sad to see her go, but in her 3 years as a member of our staff, she picked up 10 national awards. We think. We've tried counting them all. We think that's where she was at. 6 of those awards were first place in the nation for her sports coverage, which is incredible. I've done some research over the last few weeks, and there's no one else, no high school journalist even close to that. So tonight I just want to recognize Hallie for her consistency and for her hard work. Hallie will be going to the University of Missouri in the fall and joining their prestigious journalism program there. And then while she was away over summer break, she also won another award. It was an essay award for a statewide scholarship contest sponsored by the Society of Professional Journalists and MU for her essay on why expressionism through independent media is important. And she won 2nd place and a scholarship check. So I'm going to give that to her. And I think she wanted to say a few things.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here tonight. I can't tell you how much the board and Springfield Public Schools means to not just Central Intelligence as a program, but to me personally. I know that my success could not have happened anywhere else in the state and no other school. I couldn't have done it without your help and the help of every citizen in Springfield that is able to pay for the state-of-the-art equipment that I've used to make these amazing stories. So I just want to thank Dr. Prater, the board, the entire Springfield Public School staff and faculty, as well as Ms. Lemon and Dr. Snodgrass. They never turn us down. You know, they say go for it, do your best, don't be afraid to try something new. And also for my parents for putting out all those bills for nationals and Emmys and all those things. So thank you.
And her parents are here tonight, so if we could just
Have them stand up, that would be great. Well, thank you all very much. Very impressive.
Dr. Harrell, isn't there another? By the way, I noticed somebody had a Mizzou shirt on already. That's right. Okay.
I think Hallie was preordained to go to Mizzou.
That's what it was. Okay.
Most expensive shirt I've ever purchased.
That's right.
We also have Kickapoo High School here this evening, and for recognition out of their science department. We have Mr. Dave Schmitz here. We have Annie Wallemeyer with the district science curriculum area, and we also have Dr. James Crook. And they're here this evening to celebrate a team of students that went to the Team America Rocket contest out in Washington, D.C. for the national fly-off, and to tell you about those experiences. So, Dr. Crook? Miss Annie, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm very excited this evening to introduce you to the Kickapoo Rocket Team. They participated in the Team America Rocket Challenge and, of course, their flying pig. They brought the infamous rocket with them. This competition consists of them qualifying at the local level in Springfield. They were able to be one of the top 100 teams in the nation, and that allowed them to go to the finals in Plains, Virginia. Once they got to Plains, Virginia, they were able to take 23rd in the nation. The top 25 teams, their sponsor is invited to NASA in Huntington to participate in professional development and learning there. So Dr. Cook will be leaving to go to that next week. These are the team members. We're going to have them speak in just a second. I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the expectations were. They had to launch the rocket, have it climb to 750 feet, had to stay airborne for 40 to 45 seconds, and then they used a 15-inch diameter parachute to bring it back to the ground, all the while keeping an egg inside of the rocket unbroken until they could get it to the judges' station. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the guys and let them tell you a little bit about their experience.
All right, well, I'm Paul. I've been on the team for 3 years now. It's been a lot of fun. We've improved every year, and this was my senior year. I just graduated, so probably the best year for me. We got to nationals. We hadn't before. It was a lot of fun. My brother Peter couldn't be here, but I think this was his first or second year doing it, so he had a lot of fun too.
Hi, I'm Nathan Castile. This is my first year joining. I just want to say thank you. Through both this rocket competition and the amazing science department at Kickapoo, I have decided to pursue a college career at Missouri S&T for science and technology and pursue my career in science. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Josh Namio, and I want to thank you guys for it. Aside from just learning quite a bit about rocketry, just the trip to D.C., learned quite a bit there, and I would not have been able to make the trip for the national competition without the board's help for paying. And thank you.
I'm John Crook, and this is my first year on the team, and since I'm a freshman, I'm looking forward to 3 more years on the team. And it was a great experience for me to be young and still be able to go to DC on the national level to compete with great teammates that probably I couldn't have done it without. And I learned a lot from it, and I've always been intrigued by rocketry, and I want to go into a career with aerospace engineering, so this helped me out a lot with that.
This group of kids is incredible. They're bright, they're energetic, they're enthusiastic, and they want to learn. You know, what more can a science person ask for? You know, the opportunity to take these kids and let them flourish, because really they did all the work. I just kind of provided some suggestions and got them some money. So they really did the work, and that was good, because once we got to the competition, the judges did not allow any of the adults near the kids. They were fenced off completely. Weather was lousy on the day of the launch. All the rockets went up into the clouds. You couldn't see the parachutes open. I think we could have had a good, there's our rocket going off. We could have made the top 10 if our parachute had opened in the second round. We did well on the first round and made it into the finals, but the parachute didn't open, so that cost us a time penalty. So it's the only time that this year that the parachute didn't open. So anyway, the team that did won the international competition in Paris Air Show last week. Wow. Yeah. So, you know, we were beat by the best, and can't really ask for anything more. Great opportunity. These kids learned a lot, and I thank you all for supporting us. Any questions?
Questions for the group? Paul, what are your plans for next year? You're the only other senior, right?
Yeah, well, my brother is a senior too.
Okay.
We're both going to be going to Missouri S&T.
Mr. Lee's alma mater, he's going to be happy with that.
I know I like these kids.
My only other question is, can you fire it off right here?
Is that a hard-boiled egg in there? Or?
We threatened that. Unfortunately, we had to use their eggs.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you and congratulations.
I tell you, when you hear two of those two presentations like that, it makes the next 3 hours of our board meeting tolerable. Parents and students, thank you all for taking your time to come. Don't feel like you need to sit around for the next 3 hours. We'll move on to agenda modifications. Any items, any agenda items need to be modified on the board. Okay. We'll move on to my report. We have want to again recognize some partners in education, groups, organizations, businesses around the community that really put in a lot of effort working with our schools and with our students. Let me just go over the brief list, and then we'll have a special presentation. There it is. Community Foundation of the Ozarks, Cox Health, Evangel Temple, Green Tree, KOLR and KSFX, MedPay, Missouri Department of Transportation, Price Cutter Plus number 51, Ridgecrest Baptist Church, the Springfield Greene County Library Center, Sycamore Baptist Church, Bank of Missouri, U.S. Bank, Village Inn, and Walmart number 2221. And these names have been on our list before, and many of these are long-term supporters of the district, and we thank them. We have one partner in education to highlight tonight, and if Mr. Lee, if you could introduce them, I would appreciate it.
That's okay. I don't want to take it away from you, Mark.
You can introduce Mark.
No, it's my pleasure to introduce the program tonight. We have Mr. John Horton, who is club president for Springfield Rotary Southeast, Rotary Club of Springfield Southeast. Last year he went to an international conference and came back with a program to partner with the schools, public schools, on drug abuse and drug awareness from a program that was done in New Mexico, and patterned that and brought it back with some significant excitement about the possibility of doing that in Springfield with the Rotary Club and then partnering with Springfield Public Schools. And I'm not going to take a lot of his stuff because I know he wants to talk about that, but it has been an incredible program up to this point, working with our schools, and I'm going to let Mr. Horton talk about the program specifically and what it's done and what he's been able to accomplish with that program.
Thanks, Mr. Lee. I appreciate it, and Dr. Prater and the board, thanks for having me here. I'll try and be brief, and certainly if you have any questions, feel free to stop me or you can ask me when you're done. Basically, like Jerry said, when I went to Montreal last June, went to the Rotary International Convention and found a program they were doing in New Mexico, and they called it Don't Meth With Us. They were going into every fifth grade class in the county, giving them a message on methamphetamines, of how dangerous it is. They're in Farmington, New Mexico. They were able to track the drug arrest, the methamphetamine arrest for high school age kids for several years, and they have been doing the program 5 years, and they watched the statistics gradually get down to where in 2010 they had 0 arrests in high school age kids for methamphetamine use. And so we're wanting to do the same things here, although we are having a little bit of trouble getting the statistics because the Springfield Police Department doesn't actually track methamphetamines arrest. It's either drug related or not. But anyway, our goal is just to educate fifth graders on the dangers of meth. We go into every fifth grade class in Springfield, both public schools as well as we went to some private schools. We didn't get into all the private schools, but we did get into 3 different private schools. We give each child a T-shirt, a pencil, and a wristband. I brought some over here for you guys. The ones on the right, Dr. Ritter, are XLs. The ones on this side are large. You guys, I think there's 12 over there, so everybody set it at the table. Should be able to have one, and you may have a couple extra. But anyway, we try to make the presentation interactive with the kids. The message is simple. We talk about Rotary, what it is, what we do for our community, and what we do internationally. And we let them know the only reason they're there is we care about them and our community, and we want our community to be a better place to live. We talk about short and long-term goals, talk about good and bad choices, and then we get into really the meat of the presentation, which is talking about meth, how it's made, what it's used, what ingredients people use to make meth, and then we talk about effects on a person's body. We show pictures of before and after usage for some addicts. It is very graphic, the differences that using methamphetamines will make on a person's in even a short period. And all the pictures have this person, here's a picture, and here's a year and a half later, or here's 3 years later. They are stunning. The kids ooh and all over it. We then go in and show pictures of meth mouth. We talk about why it happens. We also talk about the meth sores, and again why that happens to the users of meth. It is, like I said, it is a graphic presentation, but 5th grade is the right age for them to see this thing. The average age in Missouri of a typical high school meth user, the average age of first use is 12.6 years, which is basically 6th grade. 6th or 7th grade, depending on, but probably maybe it's early 7th grade. Anyway, we just feel like it's the right time. They are. We also then get in and talk about the fact that being 5th graders, they are the leaders in their school. They are the kids that everybody in elementary school looks up to, and they are role models for those kids. And we want them to take that information. And I'll tell you, about 3 weeks after we did Disney, the chief of police came to one of our Rotary meetings, and I was talking to him, and his daughter was there, and we were chatting, and he was like, oh, yeah, my son goes to Disney, and he came home talking about it. And I was like, oh, really? Is he in 5th grade? And he said, no, he's in 2nd. So to me, it's amazing that those 5th graders get that information. And it might even been a few days after the presentation, but it quickly got down to the other grades in the school. We also... well, first of all, I'll answer any question about the 5th grade. That's basically what we're doing. We did go to every school in Springfield, and we did over 2,000 kids overall in October and February of this year. We are starting this next fall. I've met with the principals for the high schools, and we decided we wanted to really hit again the 9th and maybe 10th grade students to really reinforce that message. So as we were talking about it, we decided that we hated to miss the 11th to 12th graders, so we decided this first year we're going to go in and we're going to talk to every 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade student in the Springfield Public School System. We're bringing in a professional speaker from Nashville. He is a convicted felon, ex-drug addict, ex-drug dealer, a 2-time suicide survivor. The last time he took an assault rifle and put it under his chin, pulled the trigger, and it basically blew his face in half. He has, through that process and through his relationship with Christ, has really come around and realized he needs to tell this story. He is and when I say the Christ thing, I know there's a lot of things he can't talk about, but he specifically goes to schools to do this presentation. He is very cautious of what he can say, but he does a very blunt presentation with high schoolers to tell his story of how he went from being an athlete in high school to starting to smoke marijuana, to doing cocaine, to doing methamphetamines, and how difficult it is to stop. It's a great story. If anybody's interested, you can go to his website. It's facingthedragon.org. He has a video and a book you can buy. The book's a great read. The video is worth watching as well. Anyway, he's coming in November 7th through 11th. He's going to talk to every high school in Springfield. He's also going to put on a community event Tuesday, November 8th. We are currently in negotiations with the O'Reilly Family Event Center to have a free event for the community. We're going to advertise it. Like I said, it's open to anybody. I'm going to try to get the word out through both all the Rotary clubs in Springfield as well as the Rotary clubs in Ozark, Nixa. Get the word out to Rogersville to get people to come here. I'd love to see that venue filled for that event. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys might have. I appreciate your support. I know you guys gave us some money last year, helped us really get started, and the funds from you guys kind of helped us go to some other organizations saying, look, the Springfield Public Schools are on board. So like I said, I wanted to say thanks and appreciate that. But
any questions? Chris?
Is it Are the people that go in to do the teaching, are they all Rotary members?
They are all our Rotary members. We have partnered, and I wanted to thank the Community Partnership of the Ozarks. They actually did a terrific job of educating us on meth. We don't let somebody go into the schools and talk to the kids unless they've been through the education process of the Community Partnership of the Ozarks. They've got about an hour and a half training that we required everybody. We also made the decision early on that we only wanted Rotarians to go in. So in each class, we send 3 Rotarians in to do, and we've got the presentation kind of broken up into 3 parts, and each person does a separate part. We may change that a little bit this next year. We may try to do it with 2 because we're going to try to do it, kind of wrap it around Red Ribbon Week. So, instead of doing it over probably a 5-week period, we may try to do it in less. Somebody even suggested maybe doing it in a week, but I'm not quite on board with that yet. I won't throw you under the bus, Jerry. But anyway, yeah, everybody's Rotarian, and like I said, we go in and like I said, just tell them, hey, we're here because we care about you guys, and I did go to the elementary principal's meeting a couple months ago and tried to get some feedback, and I heard a lot of positive feedback, from hey, they enjoyed seeing you come in, your people coming in professional dress. They know that you're busy and you're taking the time out to come talk to them. So it was fun for our Rotary members getting to talk to the 5th graders. And like I said, we try to make it interactive. We ask them about their goals. We ask them about choices and so forth. And typically when I do it, I always ask for questions. And I tell you, the 5th graders are so, and I've got actually a 4th grader going into 5th grade right now. They're so inquisitive, and some schools you go in and you ask for questions and nobody will ask anything, but normally if one asks a question, boy, you've opened the floodgates. You'll get 30 or 40 or 100. And I've had times when I've looked at the principal wanting him to save me, because it's like, boy, 15 minutes later, they're still asking questions, and questions start getting somewhat repetitive. But like I said, it's been a blast going in. I probably went into a good 15 to 20 myself, and like I said, I enjoyed going in and talking to them. They're, like I said, it's fun, and like I said, it's really been a good project for our Rotary Club, just because it is something that's hands-on, and we can go and we can see the faces of the kids, and we can leave knowing there's a pretty good chance they're not going to make that mistake 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and we feel like if we can go back in 9th grade and can continue that kind of story and that message, that I'm sure there's going to be some kids that try it. I don't know that we can ever stop that, but boy, if we can take 90% of the kids that would have tried it and stop them, then if you do the math, that's 81% that that aren't going to get addicted to methamphetamine. So
I just make one comment. There was a lot of discussion about why would we be doing this, but we were number 1 in the state, number 1 in the nation. We may be 2nd now, but we were number 1 for meth labs in the state of Missouri, and it's an amazing statistics that you see and the impact. And these kids, I can tell you, these kids remember it. I've been in the classrooms at the end of the year. They got their T-shirts on, and we've talked about it. And oh yeah, I remember that. And we saw these things, and it sticks with them. And if it can stick with them for a long period of time, it's worth the time that's being spent with them.
Yeah, and speaking of, Missouri's led the nation in meth lab seizures from 2001 through 2009. 2010 is actually up in the air. If you check with the Missouri Highway Patrol, they say we still lead the nation. If you check with Tennessee, they say they lead the nation. I don't know if it's something we really know.
That's not a really good.
But either way, we're even from 2009 to 2010, it increased like 12%. It is a problem in Missouri. It's cheap. It's easy to manufacture. Until the government starts making some regulations limiting the over-the-counter access to pseudoephedrine, it's going to continue to be easy to manufacture and make, and it's cheap, and it's a high that lasts 10 to 20 times longer than cocaine. So when they try it, and it, like I said, it's so cheap and it lasts so long, it's just something these people just want to try again and again, and like I said, unfortunately, it's very addictive. So anyway, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Well, thank you for doing this, and I know your Rotary Club has been committed to public service for a long, long time, and will continue to do so. And I'll just give you an update. The Cocoa Honors students from Central High School, the Rotary got wind of the need for the Mawaya Secondary School in Tinende, Tanzania, and the Southeast Rotary ponied up a considerable amount of money to provide the first textbooks ever to this school in Tanzania. And actually, my daughter is there facilitating the delivery of the books later this summer. So we'll give you feedback on that.
Would love to have her come talk to our club and tell us how it goes. We always love to hear that feedback coming back and seeing the
we may
people
not
who
get her
help.
back.
Great. Well,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, John.
Dr. Ritter, your report.
Yeah, we're about at the end of summer school. Had the opportunity to go to JVIC and witness and participate with the science program that's going on there. It's amazing, that partnership, and I guarantee you those kids don't miss a day of school. And so Stephanie and we have representation from each one of our high schools in that special summer school, and the kids are planning to extend that into next year, et cetera. But I will have to take it one step at a time. But that was a great experience. We also, our bus fleet, and I see Rick's here, received special recognition. The buses were awarded the Total Fleet Excellence with one flaw, and that was something with the back door. I can't remember what it was, the emergency door. But so I'll just read here what I received. Springfield Public Schools earned Total Fleet Excellence with approval rating of 99.3% with no out-of-service buses. SPS presented 145 buses for inspection to the Missouri State Highway Patrol. Statewide, only 87.69% of the school buses were approved. Awards will be presented at the Missouri Association of Public Transportation Conference and Trade Show on Wednesday, July 6th. So, Rick, congratulations, and extended congratulations to your drivers, especially your mechanics. Wonderful, wonderful work. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate and recognize and thank someone who's in her last board meeting, and that is Dr. Riggs. And she made a special effort to get here tonight, and so I know you're just tickled pink that this is your, and of course I'm sure you feel very sad. Yes, yeah. But anyway, I want to thank you. Yeah, a little sarcasm there, but anyway, I want to thank you for all your years and for the wonderful work you have done. And I know you have many plans from here on out to continue to serve the community. So, on behalf of myself and the board and the staff, thank you. That's all I have.
Good, thank you. Public comments to address agenda items. I don't think we have any comments on agenda items. So we'll move on to information items, and we'll start with the K-5 Communication Arts. Dr. Ritter.
Calvin Pampering, please.
Good evening. MSIP Standard 8.1 and Board Policy IM, Evaluation of Instructional Programs, provide us with the opportunity to present the board with an update on the goals, indicators, and measures of the Communication Arts program, the K-5 Communication Arts program. The program evaluation report's available on the district website and has been provided to the Board of Education through Board Docs. And at this time, Mrs. Denise Kelly, K-12 Communication Arts Curriculum Facilitator, is here to answer questions and discuss the report.
Good evening.
Any questions? Ellen?
Does anybody else has to go? I have to get to my.
Okay, you ready? Okay, Dr. Frederick.
On your list of professional learning opportunities for teachers, can you speak? I mean, it's an extensive list, and it looks like a tremendous amount of work on someone's part, developing and providing all these opportunities. Can you talk a little bit more about the teachers' time in attending these opportunities?
This has evolved somewhat over the last 5 years. Dr. Pompering and I were talking about that. Several years ago, most of the professional development learning that the teachers did was strictly pretty much voluntary. But over the years, we've really tried to compensate at some level when the teachers take their time to attend these professional learning opportunities. If it's during the day, during the school day, a substitute is provided. So in reality, that's nothing added to the teacher's checkbook. And in fact, it's extra work when they're providing for the sub and hoping that the school day is effective when they're gone. And then if it's after school, we have a consistent stipend that we pay, which again is minimal when you consider what they usually make prorated by hour, but again, they are compensated to some extent. Then we have our Curriculum Development Council, which is the group of teachers that represent all the sites, and at that time, that is strictly voluntary. It is teachers that are committed, hopefully, to literacy. And then our K2 and our 3-5 Literacy Leader Initiative that's fairly new. Again, that's during the school day, and they're not compensated for the extra responsibilities, and they're doing that voluntary also. So overall, there's some compensation, but is it anything compared to prorated what their salary is or their time and their responsibility that they take? It's minimal. So the teachers, again, of Springfield are amazing and continue to excite me in my job. So,
on the graph with the comparable districts in the regional cohort, it's hard because a lot of the lines start to blend. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Twitty. Has there been any discussion or concern expressed that the percentage of students in the top 2 categories of the MAP test, at least in 3rd and 5th grade, seems to have gone down over the last 5 years? Looks like 4th grade has gone up. Has there been any drilling down into the data to do some? I mean, I know our student population has changed also in that time, and so it's not like we're comparing apples to apples. But I think, as our population changes, we have to be, we may have to take some different approaches to make sure that we're addressing those deficiencies.
We obviously have had several conversations about that, and in fact, it's reflected as an opportunity for improvement in this report. As you indicated, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and the MAP test is certainly an important indicator, but it's only one indicator, but it's one we do monitor very carefully. As you indicated, over the years, there's been some movement in that. There was a movement up from 08-09 to 9-10, and we were encouraged by that. And I think as Mrs. Kelly was talking a little bit about the professional learning, that we view that as a real key. We have teachers that are very committed and very enthusiastic and excited about the professional learning. And in fact, the initiative that she described, I'll let her describe it a little bit more, but the K2 Literacy Leader and 3-5 Literacy Leader is something that was implemented last year. And so again, we hope that we're seeing some evidence that is effective. We certainly have, Mrs. Kelly has received and her staff a lot of positive feedback from teachers and principals about the efficacy. But that will be something that we continue to review, that professional learning and other necessary professional learning, and of course resources that would be necessary to support teachers and students.
Is it the primary reason it's down is because of the nonfiction piece of that, as well as the mechanics of writing? Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. However, that isn't anything really new, and the fact that it's across the board is a concern. Probably 3 years ago, we noticed that nonfiction was down, and there was an emphasis to supply more nonfiction readers in the classrooms and to have more opportunities for students to read nonfiction. But I don't think we quite realize that it's not just throw more nonfiction at the students and read more and talk about nonfiction more. It's actually how the students learn to read nonfiction and navigate through that. So we're continuing to say it's not just reading more nonfiction, it's how you read nonfiction that's different than fiction, and then also learning to write in that genre, because again, when you write in that genre, you really understand how to read it and comprehend it. So you're right that that could be a big factor. The other thing is that, this problem doesn't just start in 3rd, 4th, 5th. It starts in preschool, which I was excited to see that more funding for these little guys. And then kindergarten, I think several years ago it was considered strictly developmental. We play more, and the teachers in kindergarten are starting to realize some of these, not all of them, but some of them really can read books and write stories, and so we're evolving in that area too, and that takes a while to change the ship's course, is what I'm hoping.
That's where I was going, yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing, and I've said this before, and I caution us because this is a category of students that scored in proficient or advanced. It doesn't necessarily mean those students that are at grade level, because grade level expectations can be actually lower than advanced and proficient. And I think as we present this kind of information to our community, or as the community tries to understand what it means, it just means that this is the percentage of students in advanced or proficient. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are the students that are at grade level. And I think that that's
Good point.
it's a very hard distinction to make, but it's an important one nevertheless.
Questions? Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Crampern, you get to stay up there, don't you?
Okay, I'll just stay then. The next report that we bring you is 612 mathematics, and normally I would introduce Mrs. Jennifer Reniger, the 612 or K-12, I'm sorry, mathematics curriculum facilitator. She gave birth last Wednesday, so she has a good reason not to be here. We certainly have her in our thoughts. Mother and daughter Annalise Reniger are happy and healthy, and of course Jennifer wishes she could be here, but she's doing something more important. So I'll be happy to help with any questions on 612 mathematics program evaluation.
I have one, and this is kind of goes with both program evaluations. There's a statement, I think on page 7 of the math, about the SBAC created assessments that will be mandated, and the suspension of the MAP. I know as a district we have requested a waiver from the MAP. How will that affect, if we receive that waiver, how will that affect us, the new assessments?
Yes, the new assessments, and actually the consortium that Missouri participates in is the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. There's actually 2, but those are intended to be operational 2014, 2015. They intend to field test them the year prior to that, 13, 14. So when you look out, that's still several years away. Depending on the status of the waiver with the state, there would still be at least a couple of years there where the current MAP test is operational, and if the waiver is granted, we would not participate. So I think the decision was continue to pursue that waiver, even though this is out there in 14-15, and certainly would have implications for what would happen in 14-15, whether we would continue with what's proposed in the waiver or adopt these, because these will be much more performance-like. In other words, we have the performance assessment, and these are really very, very similar to that assessment as I've looked at their development.
That does concern us, though. Now that we're doing all this work to get a waiver, and then lo and behold, in a couple of years, we have to adjust. And so we're really watching that and being very careful. So.
But our performance assessments that are in place now, it's a good training ground for what's coming ahead.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yes.
And very affirming that in fact is, that's the way that the nation's going. I mean, it's Springfield Public Schools, again, on the leading edge there with best practices.
Yeah, we're right in line with where people are thinking 5 to 10 years from now. So,
Mr. Renner.
And I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyhow. I was sort of looking ahead to 14-15 and Common Core, and we're knowing that it's going to be there. And then in between, we're still doing MAP testing, which those two are not, I don't want to say they have some commonalities, but they have some big differences also. So are we going to double teach?
Good question.
With all the extra time they have, anyhow, that's being facetious too. So how are they? That's again my concern. Like Ms. Cowan says, that we don't want to put too much emphasis on one test score, and I don't even care if it's the Common Core. Then I think our performance series. It's going to be reported on because it's a state thing, but I think if we really are convinced that the performance series is what really drives instruction and is the best for the students in Springfield, then somehow we're going to have to balance. We've got a performance series, and then we've got Common Core, and then we've got MAP, and somebody's going to report we're not doing well on something because that's just how people are. So I think
there's an
are we gonna? Can we even get our arms around that?
We can.
What's
Dr. Ritter and I actually were just involved in some learning with Willard Daggett. I'll let you speak to that.
We were really in the middle of that discussion, and they're finding that 70% of a lot of the state standards are really aligned with the core. However, 30% are not. And so they've done, it's called Navigator Plus. Next
Navigator.
Next Navigator. Thank you. It's Next Navigator or Navigator Next. One of those two. They've actually done a study by state aligned with Common Core, and our teachers can go in and we will go in to see so that we can plan for the Common Core, because really about 30% of your instruction then is wasted. So that's where I think we need to start looking and targeting that. And I think the state should start targeting that as well, as far as their assessments are concerned.
So there are a couple of things. There's the Common Core state standards, which have been released right now. The Smarter Balanced assessments have not. So the standards will certainly inform those assessments. And the point is that it actually offers an opportunity to compare those two, the Common Core state standards proposed and the current, and identify those things that are in both, and target those things that as we transition. So absolutely there is a strategy and an ongoing conversation to address exactly what you said.
Good question.
I'm interested in a couple things. First of all, I think it's interesting to see the difference in our math performance versus communication arts and the comparability with other districts. And to me, it shows that the challenges that young people have when they're not exposed to early childhood education, the impact on their communication arts knowledge and skills is different than math, and that's I know that research proves that, but I think it just shows that if we can, as a community, start to really focus on those early years of learning, it'll be really interesting to see that gap between math performance and communication arts performance lessen. Because as I understand, children of middle class or upper middle class don't have that kind of gap between their math and their.
What's interesting there is that Haiti in that research report shows that kids in math tend to get to the same level of performance much earlier with their peers. However, in comm arts they don't, because the home doesn't have
That's what
doesn't have the rigor to do that, and so therefore they're always lagging. And so I think that's something that we need to target as well, is to build the vocabulary. That's why I was asking about the nonfiction. So.
Well, and the other question I have, it has to do with the number of end-of-course exams for Algebra 1. Why did our numbers go up, over 50%?
It had to do with the implementation of that end-of-course testing, and the first year that it was operational, 08-09, I believe, we had some students, actually a number of students, and obviously other districts did. We shared some of the comparables. who had not completed that content. The Algebra 1 test is, while they're all end of course, they have really accentuated the fact that that's end of content. So it's up to a district to decide when that test is administered. And so students that are involved in classes that are integrated, that have all 5 strands, clearly don't finish the content of algebra as quickly because they've had the other strands, probability and statistics and so on, geometry. So because of that, they were delayed in taking that test 1 year. And again, that will be addressed. There'll be another phenomenon this year that's interesting, and that is that all students across the state are now responsible for all of those EOCs. So there will be a larger number tested again this year in districts. We've had conversations with other of our colleagues, and we anticipate there will be a larger number even this year. And then it should flatten out.
I guess I'm interested in, at some point in the future, I know since I've been on the board, we've made the decision to really focus as much as possible our 8th graders into Algebra 1. And I would like to have some sort of report back to the board about if we really feel that is serving, the majority of our students well. How do we feel that impacts their performance later in their math education? And would a student that took Algebra 1 in 8th grade, would they have taken this end of course exam?
Yes.
One thing that it's interesting, there's a school in Massachusetts that has 4,100 kids, and they're 99% free and reduced. They require all their 8th graders to take algebra, all of them. And they started doing that about 3 years ago. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, the focus in math, and of course, a critical part of that was literacy. They had to have K-12 literacy going on at the same time, and it helped them understand algebra much quicker. And they took a different approach, but they did require all their 8th graders to take math.
I guess that's the kind of discussion I'd like to know that's happening at the administrative level, so that we're hearing whether we still feel that's the best approach. What's best practices?
The program evaluation comes at this time,
right.
And then as you know, and as you saw in this report, actually the Curriculum Development Council, who engages in that kind of conversations and brings information and ultimately a recommendation to the board, have determined that because secondary mathematics is course-driven, algebra, geometry, and so on, and the new Common Core State Standards, they're actually asking for an additional year to fully investigate that and other questions, but and to see what secondary math, and by that I mean 6, 12, what is best for Springfield Public School students. So we anticipate bringing you that information and ultimately a recommendation that would be based on, again, those experts who are reviewing all that best information.
Good, thank you.
At the risk of giving you a soapbox here just for a second, how do you see, and I know that in place, but the new MSIP 5 standards from the mathematics standpoint impacting where we're headed? I'm not going to give you all night, but significant impact, or I know
you
more,
mean
more
if
assessments?
The proposed ones were adopted,
yes,
and you're talking
as
specifically
proposed.
about secondary mathematics. So the 3 AOCs.
And the comprehensive test that we've got, and that's
11th grade.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm prepared to get on my soapbox about that. It's certainly something that our staff has been engaged in and have been reviewing along with other colleagues. I think that it will be interesting to see exactly how that is operationalized, because right now they did say algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and there's some support for that in the Common Core State Standards. So I don't think that was created in a vacuum. But on the other hand, there's some other opportunities, some other delivery models described in the appendix of the Common Core state standards, which the governors and the chief council school commissioners have been working on. So, I think it'll be interesting to see exactly what is finalized at the state level. Very interesting.
I think you're going to see some radical changes in the next 2 years.
With the move toward potentially using ACT more as a yardstick, and our ACT scores really from 2005 through 2010 are fairly flat. Is that an issue? Is that going to be an issue for us, or something we have to look at in depth?
An issue in terms of our specific performance on that, or statewide performance?
Our performance.
Okay. Actually, performance on that particular indicator is pretty flat, typically.
Okay.
I mean, that's
certainly national and state are flat.
Yes, and a lot of that is based on the nature of that test.
Right.
It's intended to be pretty flat and pretty predictable that way. But there have been some states, and Dr. Ritter may want to speak to that as well, who have had success using the ACT as an indicator at the state level. So.
Right, and what happens there when you use it as an indicator, it becomes a focus.
Yeah.
And really it helps with college readiness, career readiness. And so I would say, because that's really not our focus right now, it's an outlier. It's a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. And if it becomes a leading indicator, it becomes a sharp focus, I think you're going to see an improvement. But now, of course, if we require all kids to take the ACT, wait a minute, that'll be a different story. Yeah. So we'd have to start.
Right now, we have about 64% of our students in the district taking the ACT.
Okay. But our performance has stayed flat, but we've increased the number of students taking it.
So that's,
right?
that's an indicator right there.
So you have, I think, a more general population taking it, not just your college bound. I have a question related to the remediation of students that go into public universities. And if I'm reading this correctly, and that actually Springfield Public Schools is below the state average, actually below the regional average, and below is good in this case, of the students needing remediation in math going on to public institutions. I understand that there's some program that's being developed with OTC. Do you know where I'm going with this?
I do.
Yeah. Would you talk a little bit about that? I found out about it through another project that I'm involved in, but to kind of give juniors a gauge of where they are. Would you mind sharing that?
The Compass assessment, I believe, is what you're referencing, and we are partnering with OTC to utilize that product. Actually, secondary schools cannot purchase the product, but it is in the ACT family, and it's actually used by OTC and others as a placement test. And so the idea of a partnership, an outreach partnership on the part of OTC, is that it informs students and parents earlier while they're still in high school about what would happen if they were to take a placement test for higher education. And while we have that right now for ACT, it does reflect 65% of our students. So there's a number of students who don't have that indicator in ACT that says, I need more coursework. So again, communities, districts that have had this partnership, and there aren't a lot of them, but there are some who've had good results because it's a motivating factor for really taking advantage of the senior year. Quite often, seniors don't take more math that they could, and consequently they don't benefit. They're out of the math loop. Then when they go take the placement test, they don't score the way they want to, and they take remedial classes. So that was something that we were concerned about. It's something OTC's concerned about, and so we're pursuing that partnership. We did a limited implementation this spring with about 300 of our juniors and principals and teachers and counselors and others are reviewing that to see what kind of a larger scale implementation would look like next fall.
Well, and it's my understanding that A+ is going to be changed so that that scholarship no longer will pay for remedial classes.
Right.
So there'll be also
Another
an
motivating
incentive.
factor. Yes, incentive.
Well, and I think as A+ has grown, and when a lot of the community colleges don't require the ACT as an entrance exam, I think it's important for students to be able to gauge where they are with other college students. So,
Thank you very much. Interesting.
By the way, along that note, the top 4 nations across the world, it's kind of interesting to get into college there. You must pass a test. You don't have a shot to get into college without, if you have money, big deal. And so you need to really meet that benchmark, then you can get into college. That's a huge factor. And so I know New York kind of has that in place, and so that may be part of the conversation in the very short term here, because they're looking at that. So.
IB program.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr. Harrell.
Is it Mr. Grandin? Mr. Grandin? Okay, Mr. Harrell. Dr. Harrell, please.
Thank you. Compliance with Missouri School Improvement Program Standard 8 and the Board of Education Policy IM requires the goals of all program services to be reviewed by the board. Tonight it is my pleasure to present to you a group of educators and writers who prepared the program. It is available on the district website and has been sent to you through board docs. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. James Grandin, and he will introduce the team that put this report together for you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandin. Not doctor yet. Let me introduce to you the associates that I have the pleasure of working with in implementing the vision of the board with the IB programs in the Springfield Public Schools. Mr. Tim Ziegler from Pipkin, and David Martin from Roundtree. You want to stand as I say your name? That might be nice. Laura Burdett is the coordinator at Roundtree. Melissa Morgan, the coordinator for the diploma program at Central. Ms. Jody Tetlow is a parent at Field Elementary. Joseph Tetlow is a student at Field Elementary. Susan Langston is a coordinator for the MYP at Pipkin. We have a couple teachers from Pipkin, Mr. Brian Pick and Steve Inglesby here with us. And Mr. Jeff Sheely is a parent with 3 students in the MYP and the DP, as well as Dr. Nancy Colball, who is our outgoing field principal. Ms. Janelle Bagwell, our incoming principal at Field. Ms. Jamie Quirk is the coordinator at Boyd and Field Elementary, and of course, Dr. Ron Snodgrass at Central. Oh, I'm sorry. Apologize. Miss Ann Steinberg from Pipkin. I apologize. So I've got a wonderful group with me this evening. We wanted in particular to have an opportunity to share with you some of the feedback from our students and figure out how to minimize. There we go. We had a group from Central High School, some of the same ones that you saw earlier, who created for us at the end of this school year a presentation that will share with you some of the feedback from our students and parents about the program. And following this, I'll introduce to you 2 parents that have some information to share about the program in their homes.
And caring young people who help to create. The International Baccalaureate aims to develop inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. Springfield Public Schools is one of 17 fully accredited K-12 districts in North America offering the International Baccalaureate's 3 programs, which include the IB Primary Years Program, known as PYP, the IB Middle Years Program, known as MYP, and the IB Diploma Program.
We felt like it gave our children the best advantage as far as taking an active role in their own education
The IB Primary Years Program is a challenging program that demands the best from both motivated students and teachers through a transdisciplinary curriculum. SPS schools that offer the PYP program include Field, Roundtree, and Boyd Elementary Schools.
It's very exciting. It I think it really has re-energized the whole building. I have had to become a different type of leader, much more collaborative.
I was really interested in the idea of inquiry-based learning and the idea that kids can drive their own learning and that there's no limit placed on what they can learn.
I think that the most important thing is to just kind of have fun and learn. It's fun because we do a lot of activities and talk with our class a lot.
I've learned that if something's hard, then not just give up and try and do it always by myself, and that I can get help from different people.
I think the most important thing about learning is learning about the world around you, like the environment, and learning how to understand like other people.
The IB Middle Years Program, designed for students aged 11 to 16, builds on the IB Primary Years Program by providing a framework of education that connects traditional subjects in the real world.
It's allowing the students to have more freedom in their choice. I gave the example of crime scene investigation. And now when they did their presentations, the way that for the communication and science, the way it's laid out, it allowed some of them to use technology. I had some students who set up a courtroom. I think it's allowing the students now to think more about how do they want to show me what they've learned.
I came to Pipkin because it's academically challenging. I find that Pipkin is more rigorous than other schools, and it also pushes me to be more introspective about the world around me.
The teachers, they help you understand everything until you very clearly understand the whole lesson. The IB Diploma Program focuses on preparing students to succeed at universities and life after high school by providing a balanced and academically challenged education for students.
The IB Diploma Program is a challenging pre-university curriculum. So the goal is that students are doing college-level work for both their junior and senior year.
What I like about the IB program is that in other school curriculum, subjects don't interact with each other and they don't flow together. But with IB, because it's all designed by one program, your history class matches up with what you're learning in math, and math lines up with what you're learning in your sixth subject, and it all just flows together, and it's a really cohesive curriculum.
Well, being in the IB program requires a student to be really, really organized because the workload is really heavy, so we have to be well organized and then have a good work ethic in order to stay on top of all our work and be successful.
To contribute to the global society, we have to be globally minded individuals, and IB is a really great program at producing a culture for students to thrive and learn about different things going on around the world, and also learn about themselves through TOK and a curriculum that is all tied together.
The IB program, we learn different ways of thinking out of the box, and we learn how to write more effectively. All these skills will in turn prepare us for college and the university experience. So with the IB program, we'll be well prepared for our further education.
The IB program as a whole benefits Springfield Public Schools because it gives parents, it gives students a choice, and so I think it benefits those families who want something more and gives them a unique experience within the public schools that they really can't find anywhere else.
The International Baccalaureate hopes that by building knowledge through 3 programs, a better world will be created through education, one generation at a time. For more information about the IB programs available in Springfield Public Schools, visit the SPS website.
Let me now introduce Ms. Jody Tetlow. She is representing our parents at the PYP level, and she has a message to share.
My name is Jody Tetlow, and I first want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of parents within the Primary Years program. After being asked to provide feedback from a parent's perspective, I reached out to families at each site, Boyd, Eugene Field, and Roundtree, to gather information to share with you this evening. I myself am a lifelong Springfield resident and an alumni of Springfield Public Schools. I went to Wilder Elementary. Presently, I have 2 children attending Eugene Field Elementary and 1 more at home who will be in kindergarten in 2012. I have had the honor of being involved in our school community and am pleased to be here tonight. The decision of where a child will start his or her educational career is one of great significance for a parent. Many families within our community start to consider this decision as they are planning for the birth of their child. It influences their career choices, their residence, and their family dynamics. As parents, we want to ensure that our children are in an environment which empowers them to achieve their fullest potential. The choices available within Springfield Public Schools allow for children and parents to have the opportunity to find a good fit. Within the PYP program, many families have found just that, a great fit and something that is helping benefit our communities as a whole. Each year, it is evident to parents that students and teachers are becoming more fluent with the program, taking it to deeper levels. Families have found that they too are growing and changing in many ways. We have become a part of an exciting and engaging community. Our students are given tools so that they may tackle not only the known challenges of today's society, but all the unknowns of tomorrow's. They are learning to follow the model of a learner who gains knowledge within the classroom while being allowed to explore their natural curiosities. Each year within the program, they strengthen their understanding of what it means to be a thinker, to communicate in ways outside of their own perspective, and to act with compassion and integrity. They are risk takers, learning to make balanced choices while reflecting on their actions. Many parents have expressed how excited and engaged their children truly are about what they are doing at school. This attitude that our students are carrying with them, cultivated in the classroom, goes far beyond the walls of the school. It can be a real challenge for an adult to learn to articulate themselves to others, to make balanced choices, and to reflect on his or her actions. Our students are gaining these strategies today, and we're thankful. They are monitoring and taking ownership of their learning at the start of their educational careers with this program. At the heart of the program is a passion to grow and learn through action. Each person who works or volunteers in the school plays a valuable role. Our secretaries, staff members, teachers, volunteers, parents, and children work with a common purpose to achieve new possibilities. For a parent, it means a lot to know that they are in good hands and that each person in the building is valued and plays a role. We believe that you may see in us that which IB hopes to ultimately create, a community of balanced and caring individuals who value learning and responsibility. We hope that each of you will take time to continue to visit our schools, as that is the very best way to see the successes and the strengths for yourselves, and also to help us to continue to work together as we make strides for each child. Thank you again for this opportunity to hear some parent feedback.
Thank you.
And now let me introduce Mr. Jeff Sheely to represent the MYP and the DP program.
Well, being the product of this school district, born and raised here, then moved away for 2 decades, when I graduated from Parkview High School, there was a guy making millions of dollars talking about thinking globally and acting locally. And there's nothing that typifies that better than the IB program. I have an incoming 8th grader at Pipkin in the MYP. I have an incoming sophomore who's going into the IB diploma program at Central, and I have one that's incoming senior at Central. So we're right in the thick of it. From a parental perspective, what I really, really appreciate about the IB program is it's research-driven. You talked about nonfiction reading. It's research-driven, it's hypotheses, it's proving your hypotheses or disproving it. It's being able to think critically and being able to communicate it, not just verbally, but in writing. And as a business person for the last 20-some years, I can tell you that the one thing that's missing out there is just that, thinking critically and being able to express it both verbally and in writing. This program does a fantastic job. From my perspective, it has put me in positions as a parent I never thought I would be in. Helping a 7th grader with basically pre-algebra for one moment, going to descriptive geometry the next moment, then in an hour later at 11 o'clock at night, having a junior wanting to discuss To Kill a Mockingbird as she's writing a report on it. So It has been quite demanding on myself and my wife as we go back through everything we've ever learned. But I will tell you that I'm already quite proud, as most parents would like to be able to say, that the experiences my children have had going through this program have given them a completely different cultural outlook than what I grew up with. And I'm very proud of that fact. They're going to have to communicate across cultures as we go forward, as they go forward through life. So this gives them a real fundamental outlook to respect other people and other persons' viewpoints and be able to communicate and try to collaborate. The collaborative effort is just outstanding. I'm a technical person in business, so I wind up collaborating all the time with other technical people, and we spend 99.9% of our time trying to communicate. So having a different platform of experience to work from as a young person is going to give them a great advantage moving forward. I think it's a fantastic program. I applaud the district for wholeheartedly supporting such a choice program that produces, in my opinion, just tremendous results. Thank you very much. Any questions for me as a middle school and high school experience at the whole secondary level? Be happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
And again, thank you from each of us as educators for the privilege of being able to implement such a wonderful program. As you heard, only 17 in the nation, K through 12. We are definitely on the map in Springfield Public Schools. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure we will. As one of the several parents here in the room who have survived having children go through the system, I think we're all impressed with how they are at their university levels competitive with people from all areas of the country and all types of public and private schools. So parents, your work's not over, but it's a great start. Questions, Dr. Grandin? Ms. Callan?
Yes, I was interested, and I had sent this question to Dr. Ritter over the weekend. The results of the map for the PYP is grouped by all three schools in terms of where the performance of students in PYP compared to SPS. And I was interested in having those numbers for each site, because what I'd like to see is, has there been improvement at each site as the program has been implemented?
Indeed there has. I have prepared that information. I'll make sure that each of you get a copy of that. Each site is either above district average or is on a higher growth plane than the current district average, so should intersect shortly.
Okay, so there's been improvement at each of the sites
Every
in
single
both
one, yeah.
communication arts and in
math.
Okay. I guess the other thing I'd like to say is someone, my children didn't get to participate in PYP, and my youngest daughter was just on the beginning of the MYP, but I've had a graduate of the diploma program and now a senior. And I think the point that one of the parents made about just an awareness culturally, and not just globally culturally, but the culture here in Springfield. And I think that the sites that we've chosen, or that chose this program for themselves and that we approved, there has been a coming together of people in this community that may not have come together in another arena. I think there's been a bridging of some of those understandings even within our own community, some elimination of prejudice, certain prejudices that existed both economically, racially, and for me as a parent, might get a little emotional here, but that's what we need to be teaching our young people. And I think that has been a challenge in this community just because of the nature of who we are. And so I think that any time we can find opportunities to have that happen in a natural way, I know some communities have tried to do that through busing children from one side of the town to the other and enforced that type of social and ethnic integration, but for that to happen through choice and through a desire for that for families and children, I think is particularly a powerful piece of this program, and I'm thankful for that, and I hope that we can continue as times will hopefully start to loosen the financial constraints that we've had, that we'll be able to replicate this program or introduce it into other sites, because I think it's an important way to learn, it's an important way to collaborate, it's an important way to be a person, and understand people for who they are. So I'm glad it's a choice that we have.
I'm surprised we don't have applause coming from the back on that one.
That's okay. I'm not doing it for applause.
Well, and that's a perfect lead into my next question is, as we see the enrollment figures for all three schools go up, we are going to run out of space for these kids.
Have already, yes.
Yeah, have already in several instances.
If I may, Mr. Renner has said this several times regarding choice program, and that is we need to take parts of it and replicate it across all of our systems. And the collaboration piece is a critical piece, and the new learning model is going to have quite a bit of this in it. And so in my previous life, yeah, that's a good way to say it. Anyway, many of the schools around the PYP, MYP, IB start using the inquiry, start collaborating, and you can feel. Now, I think the Common Core standards are going to demand us to go this route. I think you're going to find that the 70% that aligns along this line. So I think it's something that we'll have to watch, and I think it's going to be something that's going to help us. So
I was just going to reinforce something what Chris said about and the cultural diversity that you see, because I go back when my son was there, he was on the swim team. There were 20 different nationalities on a swim team. 20. And I told him, I said, you probably don't appreciate this now or don't understand the impact that is until you get older. And just the diversity and the tolerance and the acceptance and collaborating with a worldwide, an international flavor, which if we could replicate that across the whole district would be fabulous. But I mean, it brings those people together, not only academically, socially, and competitively, whatever you want to say. And I think that is something that is a huge, huge benefit for a program like this. And so I just, anecdotal.
First, I'd like to thank your leadership for answering a few questions for me. It just provides some additional information for me, and they did that on short notice, and I know that that's a time-consuming thing to do. So I want to thank all of you for that. The other question I have is on the last page of the financial analysis, and I know that it shows that this program is just a little tiny sliver of our general operating costs, but what would that look like if you were comparing the operating costs of the IB program buildings to our other buildings? Do we have any idea of what that would look like? Because I think this is from the general operating expense, and that's all salaries and benefits district-wide. So what would that look like maybe in comparison to our other buildings?
I'd be happy to get that information for you.
Okay, that would be great to see that.
If I may respond a little bit to that, Summit County in Colorado went district-wide, and what they did was they increased their class size by 10% to cover the increase in cost, and increasing class size helped them provide better collaboration. Now, figure that out, and that's kind of interesting. They just did that here in the last year, so something to look at.
Well, and when you look at mobility and attendance numbers both, that has to be saving us dollars. I don't think it's going to be tough to quantify, but you have to think that's a plus in terms of expenditures.
One last thing. Any thoughts or any discussion on expanding at the middle school or the high school level?
I don't think James has that answer.
He's saying hopefully.
I could say yes, please. I don't know.
Yeah.
The demand from our parents has been exceptional. The commitment of our communities, the culture that's been built has been phenomenal. And the teachers have worked exceptionally hard. This is not an easy program to implement. It's not something where you can not put in some significant commitment levels and time training and building a curriculum, especially at the PYP level. So it's at every level, honestly. It's a great challenge, but it's something that our teachers, our students, our communities have risen to in a marvelous way.
Ms. Twitty.
Mine is more of a generic thought in that this is our crown jewel, and we really like to tout it, I think, as often as we can. But the idea that we continue to use the word choice when, in fact, we are running out of space, we have limited resources. If this were system-wide, and it was not a choice of parents, it wasn't a choice of the student to do this, would you get the same engagement from the parents and the students, or would it just simply be part of a curriculum that was available? Is it special because it's choice?
That's an excellent question. I'm aware of just a few districts that have tried it district-wide. It's a very unusual thing to do. I'm not aware of any studies of what impact that's had, but that would be a great question to ask them.
I know, again, Summit County, that small district, now of course it's just short term, 2 years, but there are some parents who left the district because of it.
So in other words, it's not for everyone.
Well, I think they were wanting more of the traditional. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. You know.
Thank you.
So I think that's a true statement. It maybe isn't for everyone, but it's good for my kids.
Well, thanks for all the work you've done on the evaluation, and to the parents and staff teachers back there in the back, for number one, for sitting through all this tonight, number two, for the hands-on daily work that you all do, and I think many of us are well aware how much it takes, so thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back to forge ahead.
Forge ahead into the...
Yeah.
Tennessee.
It was everyone left. And then Annie was with us, and so we played 20 questions.
Oh.
She's our Sergeant of Arms here. Can I bring Mr. McKenna up?
You may. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ritter, members of the board. Action item 8.01 is the revision to the collective bargaining agreement between the district and the Teamsters Local Union 245 and their representation of the district's transportation, bus drivers, aides, and nurses. As the board's aware, in February, the board voted to ratify a collective bargaining agreement between that unit and the district. One provision of that contract allows for annual negotiation of economic or financial terms and conditions of employment, including salary and benefits. The revision that we have for you tonight is the result of negotiations for those economic terms in the contract itself. If approved, those provisions of the contract would become effective on July 1st and continue through June 30 of 2012. The estimated additional cost to the district if this revision is approved is additional $115,000, which is included in the district's operating budget for the coming fiscal year. Our recommendation is that the board approve the superintendent or designee to sign this revision to the contract between the Teamsters and the district. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Callan and second by Mrs. Twitty. Now we're going to do the voting again, and Mrs. Luton has some very pertinent instructions for us.
Okay, first of all, following the last meeting, I did contact board docs, and then in working with our IT department, we did make some adjustments that hopefully make it a little quicker. But one of the major items that we came across in testing was that if you have a document open, like one of the PDFs, we need to minimize those because your little boxes are going to come up behind your document. So the first, as we get ready to vote, if you would just make sure that all your attachments are minimized. You don't necessarily even have to be on that board item. You do have to be in the meeting, but not necessarily
ESPN or.
Can't be surfing the.
No.
Oh, shoot.
Everything minimized, I'm going to get it. And hopefully your little boxes should come up, wait a minute, very quickly.
Oh, does the action item need to be open? Oh, okay.
And she promises after 20 votes tonight, we're going to be
We'll be
smooth.
pros.
And does it just take a while? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. 8.02. I didn't reread the motion on that last one. Are you okay with that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Travers.
Good evening, Mr. President, Board of Education, Dr. Ritter. The action item before you is a proposed policy regarding fund balance. This policy is due to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board issuance of Statement 54, which is effective for our June 30, 2011 annual financial statements. This policy provides the following classifications of fund balance: non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned, as well as discusses our minimum fund balance policies. The only impact of these classifications will be on our year-end, entity-wide annual financial statements. Administration recommends that the Board of Education approves policy DIAA, fund balance, for first reading. Does anybody have any questions?
So this does not affect our board policy as where we put our fund balance. This is accepting a general accounting principle that you're required to file with different reporting entities.
Right, and what it effectively does is in the past, the fund balance has been lumped together as fund balance. This further gives you a better picture of what that fund balance entails. So for instance, if you have capital assets, that's not really spendable funds. So now that's going to be classified as non-spendable. So it kind of clarifies and gives a better look of what your fund balance is actually made up of.
Any other questions? Take a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Lee.
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the Board of Education approve policy DIAA, fund balance, for first reading. Getting pretty quick, Mrs. Luton. 8.03, revision of board policy IIBC. Dr. Crampers.
I'll introduce Dr. Robin Hagerman, Director of Information Literacy, who will present the action item for the revision of board policy IIBC.
IIBC was last adopted in July of 2004. The corresponding MSBA sample policy was reviewed, which is where the current title, the Instructional Media Center and School Libraries, originated. We wish to better customize that MSBA policy by revising the title to the Library Media Center, which is what we actually call libraries in Springfield Public Schools. IIBC has also been updated to more clearly explain the privacy of library records. It's our recommendation that the Board of Education approves the name change and revised board policy IIBC, the Library Media Center, for first reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good. A motion?
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Callan, Mrs. Twitty. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the name change and revised board policy IIBC, the Library Media Center, for first reading. Thank you very much. I think it'll pass. Yeah. Good. And the next one is where I lost my place now. 04. And you're probably going to present that one to us. Thank you.
Policy EGAAA was last adopted in June of 2004. It will remain largely unchanged, but would now include using technology to reproduce copyrighted materials. It is our recommendation that the Board of Education approves the revised Board Policy EGAAA, reproduction of copyrighted materials for first reading. May I answer any questions?
Good. This kind of makes sense to keep up with technology, doesn't it? Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
Mr. Lee, that the Board of Education approve revised Board Policy EGAAA, reproduction of copyrighted materials for first reading. Revision of Board Policy GBBDA, Employee Sick Leave Plan. Mr. McKenna.
Good thing you know your alphabet there.
I'm working this here.
Thank you, Dr. Prater, members of the board. Action item 8.05 is the revision to Board of Education Policy GBBDA, Employee Sick Leave Plan. These revisions, which are presented to you in the attachment and board documents, make our employee policy as a part of our body of board policies consistent with our collective bargaining agreements, which have already been ratified by both union and the Board of Education. Again, a red line version, which has been reviewed by legal counsel, is attached for your review, and the proposed revisions will result in a reduction of sick leave accrual provided to employees. However, because of the uncertainty of the impact of that change, a fiscal note isn't specifically listed in this action item. Our recommendation would be that the board approve the revisions to Board Policy GBBDA for first reading. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Callan.
Second.
By Dr. Frederick, that the board approve the revisions to Policy GBBDA as presented. This is going to make Mrs. Luton's production of the minutes so much easier here. All right, 8.06, revision of board policy, revision of Board Policy GBM, staff complaints and grievances. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you. This is a revision of Board Policy GBM, staff complaints and grievances. Again, this makes this employee policy more consistent and, in fact, exactly consistent with the collective bargaining agreements which have been ratified and adopted by the board and the district's collective bargaining units. A red line version of the policy, which has been reviewed by legal counsel, is attached for your review. And again, our recommendation would be that the board approve the revisions to Board Policy GBM for first reading, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mrs. Twitty moved, and
Second.
Mrs. Callan seconded. The board approve revisions to Policy GBM as presented. All right, 8.07, deletion of Board of Education Policy GDBF. Support staff maintenance, custodial service, and supply center workforce.
Thank you. Action item 8.07 deletes the policy that you referenced in response to the board's adoption of a collective bargaining agreement for this workforce. That agreement would take the place of the agreement that has been previously a part of the body of board policies. No fiscal impact, and this change has been reviewed by legal counsel. The old policy, which is entirely marked out, has been attached for your review in board docs.
Good.
Our recommendation is that the board approve the deletion of Board Policy GDBF as presented for first reading, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mrs. Twitty, and seconded by Mr. Lee, that the board deletion of Board Policy GDBF. 8.08, revision of Board Policy EBBA, first aid. This is a second reading.
It's going to be Dr. Riggs or Dr. Harrell? Okay.
Yes, this is a second reading for EBBA. This is dealing with a name change, the illness and injury response and prevention. This was last presented at the May board meeting.
Good. Is additional questions for Mr. Harrell, Dr. Harrell? I'd take a motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Callen.
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the Board of Education approve policy EBBA, illness and injury response and prevention for second reading. I suspect you're up for 8.09, Board Policy JHC, Student Health Services and Requirements.
Yes, this is a review of a policy last changed in '94, and again, this is a second reading of that policy, and it is administration's recommendation that it be approved for second reading.
Any questions? Mr. Lee.
Second.
And Mrs. Twitty, that the Board of Education approve policy JHC, Student Health Services and Requirements for second reading. Thank you very much. And 8.10, Board Policy JHCF, Student Allergy Prevention and Response.
And this is the third in a series of policies dealing with health services. And again, this would be a second reading policy for student allergy prevention and response. It would be our recommendation for approval for second reading.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty and Mrs. Callen, that the Board of Education approve the policy JHCF, Student Allergy Prevention and Response. .11, Board Policy JHG, Reporting of Child Abuse.
Yes, the revision of policy JHG with reporting child abuse aligns that to current practices as well as state expectations. This was a second reading, and be our recommendation that you approve that for second reading.
So moved.
Mrs. Callen.
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the Board approve the policy JHG, Reporting Child Abuse after second reading. And 8.12, Adoption of Board Policy JHD, Student Guidance and Counseling.
This is a alignment of our current policy with Missouri standards and an update of that policy. This is a second reading. Again, it would be the administration's recommendation that the board approve that for second reading.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty. Second. Mr. Lee, that the Board of Education approve policy JHD, Student Guidance and Counseling for second reading. Thanks to the staff for all their work on the policy updating. I know we were probably non-compliant with a few state laws and some updated recommendations, and it's good to keep current, and we'll look forward to the next 12.
12? I think it's
8.13, reauthorization for application and reporting. Dr. Ritter.
Yeah, this is second reading, and this is primarily authorization as far as all the federal acts and No Child Left Behind, all that stuff. Anyway, does anybody have any questions? And you're authorizing the superintendent to serve as a person of authority in that area.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Callen and Mrs. Twitty, that the board designate the superintendent to be the authorized reporting agent.
Just a minute, Kathy.
Close the whole thing, didn't you? Uh-oh. She's got to log back
Just a
on.
minute. That's a problem child.
I'm just closing it. If I have this open, I just exit out. You can do either way. You can minimize it or close it. If you open the PDF for the action item, you can either minimize it or
Just so
close
you
it.
can see the box.
Yeah, just so you can see this screen.
Okay, wait, I'm in the meeting now.
Okay, sorry.
If she closed it out.
Okay, yeah.
I just voted.
That's what I've done before too.
Probably the same thing is true for the next
Yes, for the compliance statement.
compliance statement, yes.
Just formalities we do every year.
Right.
I'll take a motion on the compliance statement from Mr. Lee and a second. Dr. Frederick, that the Board of Education approve maintaining compliance with requirements of the aforementioned statutes.
Good.
Good.
You can do it.
8.15, fundraising agreement, Mr. Chodas.
Thank you. The district has 5 high schools. Harrison Stadium, which is Central High's athletic field, is maintained by Drury University under a 40-year agreement. Of the remaining 4 high schools, 3 of them do not have artificial turf. And at the 4th one, Parkview, the John F. Kennedy Stadium turf is nearing the end of its useful life. In addition, the tracks at the 3 high schools without artificial turf do not have standard 8 lanes and are not the standard 400 meters in length. How we might address these issues, we had discussion a number of months ago, and we didn't believe it was appropriate time for a bond issue. That's still in our future, but not at this time. So there was discussion on how we might address these issues. And so what you have before you is a fundraising agreement, and it's the district's intent to contract with an organization to raise through donations and advertising the funds necessary to install the artificial turf at the 3 high schools, replace the turf at JFK Stadium, and to replace the track at the 3 high schools. In May, requests for qualifications were obtained from 3 companies specializing in the areas of fundraising and or project management of turf installation. The RFQs were evaluated, and Athletic Services Plus proposal was unanimously supported by the review committee. Fiscal note, it's anticipated that the cost for this agreement will be funded from donations raised by Athletic Services Plus, and it's administration's recommendation that the board approve the selection of Athletic Services Plus to provide fundraising services for the district for the purpose of installing artificial turf and track replacement at the 4 high schools. Any questions?
Ms. Cowan.
So will there be any work done before the private funds are raised? I mean, is this work all dependent on private fundraising?
We have a minimum goal of $2.5 million, which would enable us to then get started. But until we reach at least that minimum level, the answer is no.
So the district wouldn't be out any money, or we wouldn't initiate the projects until there was private money?
Correct.
Mr. Lake,
I get a point to that. I guess one of the things with respect to how much you raise, and I'm just going to deal with Kennedy Stadium because that's a replacement, and I hope we can raise money to do that, but that is, I think, a responsibility of this district from a replacement standpoint. If it got down to having to replace that, I'm not thinking it's going to happen because I think we'll raise money to be able to do it, but I think there's a point in there where Kennedy Stadium, that field is there, and its useful life is done. And if it got down to, is that a responsibility as an operating fund to take care of it? That's a responsibility we have. Now, putting together 3 new fields, that's a different story. So, I mean, I feel comfortable with that level that we can do those 3 fields, but I think there's some obligation from our standpoint to replace Kennedy from an operating fund if it gets to that point. I'm optimistic that it won't, but
that would always come back to the board.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Absolutely.
What we're approving tonight is the
Yeah.
private
That's just
fundraising.
the fundraising, yes.
I've got to commend you and Mr. Fisher on this. This has been a long process, and I think you've approached it right. And I think the concept of private donations for things that we frankly don't have the resources for is a great one. And if we can make our district look good and function better with private money, gosh, think of where that can take us. So I'm impressed with the way that you all have come to this. Ms. Twitty.
I think and again, this discussion has been ongoing for quite some time about the possibilities, maybe even as far as 2 years ago.
Pretty close.
So the thing that grabbed me first and foremost, we want to be proud about our facilities, and they need to be up to par with all those that we compete with in our region. But the significance of having those facilities available to the public, the general public for use, and how it can have some impact on across our district and to the health, the betterment of those who would use it and recreate with it, was really, really appealing to me, and I think that really started some of the motors going on this.
Right, and I think there's a tendency on people when they hear of athletic field, their first thought is football, but there's much more than this.
Right.
Any other questions? I'd listen for a motion otherwise.
So move.
Mr. Lee and Mrs. Twitty, that the board approve the selection of Athletic Services Plus to provide fundraising services for the district for the purpose of installing artificial turf and track replacement at the 4 high schools. And while you're up there, Mr. Chodas, 8.16, the owner's representative agreement.
Okay. Should the funds be raised to install artificial turf at the 3 high schools and replace the turf at JFK and the tracks, etc., the district will need project management experience in these projects. And Athletic Services Plus not only has the experience in the fundraising, but also has the experience in the project management. We need someone that we can rely on to kind of keep an eye on the contractors, make sure that the fields are installed properly, and that we're getting the proper bang for our buck. And at this time, administration asks the board to approve Athletic Services Plus owner's representative agreement to provide the project management services for the purpose of installing artificial turf and track replacement at the high schools.
So this would be, could you explain how this relationship would work? Because it sounds like this would be dependent on whether the funds were raised.
That's correct. Athletic Services has been involved in a number of field installations and has expertise that we value.
And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is similar to the way in that we have engineering companies monitor contractors for air conditioning projects. Right. We have architects monitor contractors, so the actual services would be it would be bid, and he would act as our owner's representative.
Right.
Questions? A motion?
So moved.
Mr. Renner, Mrs. Twitty, that the board approve Athletic Services Plus owner's representative agreement to provide project management for the district for the purposes of installing artificial turf and track replacements. I didn't have to close out on my PDF. It pops right up, so maybe. 8.17.
I'm not going to risk it.
8.17, granting of utility easement at 2003 North Line for Reed. Mr. Wendt.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ritter. The action item that is before you is for the granting of an easement by Reed Elementary School. This is a standard utility easement, as the board has seen many in the past. This easement is actually for Southwestern Bell Telephone Company. There's a current easement, which is about a 10-foot by 10-foot area for them. This would expand that an additional 10-foot by 15. The district would receive $2,500 for the granting of this easement, and it is the recommendation of administration that the board would approve the above referenced utility easement to Southwestern Bell.
Mrs. Twitty, second by
Second.
Mrs. Callan, that the board approve the above referenced utility easement to Southwestern Bell.
Twitty, Callan.
Yeah. I suspect is yours, Mr. Wendt, the gym floor replacement for the pit at Central High School.
Yes, sir. Actually, this is for the practice gym at Central High School.
The new gym. The new gym.
The newer.
They call it the new gym.
Right. And basically, it's for replacing the old rubber floor that is there. It was rumored that Mr. Fisher was 17 when that floor was there. I don't know if that was factual or not. We did put this project out to bid. Bids were opened on June 21st. We only received one bid on this project, and the bid tab is attached. The bid tab shows a price of $93,305.75. Facilities, thanks to Mr. Bishop and his staff, negotiated with the bidder to reduce the cost of that project by $9,645. This project is slated to be funded by the 2011-12 major repair funds, and it is administration's recommendation that the board awards the contract to Jarrett Enterprises, Inc. of Kabul, Missouri, in the amount of $83,660.75.
Questions?
So moved.
Mrs. Callan?
Second.
By Mrs. Twitty, and thank you to Mr. Bishop for negotiating that the board awards the contract to Jarrett Enterprises, Kabul, for the amount of $83,660.75. And 8.19, Hillcrest High School building management controls replacement.
Thank you. This item is for the replacement of controls in the existing building. We basically have an annotated control system there at Hillcrest High School. We put out a bid package to replace the controls to bring that up to date with what we have in the new science edition there at Hillcrest. In pertinent fact, A2, it describes a brief scope of the work with that project. We did have the bids. We received 2 bids from different contractors, CTS out of St. Louis and AAP locally. Malone, Finkel, Eckhart, and Collins was the engineer for this project. You will notice on the attachment of the bid tabulation, there's one item that was listed for an itemized cost dealing with unit price for the calibration per sensor. CTS did not list a cost in there, and in working with the engineer and evaluating the informality on this bid tab, it was actually determined that in the actual scope of the project, calibration of sensors was already covered in the scope of the project, so this was a redundancy here. So whether a sensors, doesn't matter where it's located, whether it's in the boiler room or plenum or on the roof, they still are required to go ahead and calibrate that sensor, so it wasn't necessary to have a unit price for that. So based on that, we would ask that the board would waive that informality, but that we would also request that the board would allow us to issue a contract to CTS for the Control Technology and Solutions of St. Louis, Missouri, in the amount of $251,810 for that control work.
How does this work fit into the renovation that's going on at Hillcrest right now?
Actually, Esterly Schneider is the architect that is doing that work that's planned, which we're getting ready to bid out here shortly. And Malone, Finkel, Eckhart, and Collins is the engineer that they used. So it's the same engineer, so we were able to coordinate those efforts. And it really only will affect some of the renovated areas in that building. So we've already coordinated that as part of that.
Okay, so it's consistent. It's
correct. Yes.
I'll move that. I'll move the recommendation.
Motion with Mrs. Callan, second by Mr. Renner. The board issue a contract to Control Technology and Solutions in the amount of $251,810. Thank you, Mr. Witt.
Thank you.
Just a few minor items items left to cover. Mr. Chodas? 8.20, the 2010-2011 final budget.
Okay, the end of the year. Each year in June, the board approves the final budget. Attachment A presents the final projected revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year ending June 30. The amounts presented in the attachment have not been audited but are based on the district's best estimates using information currently available. Additional revenues and expenditures can be accrued into the year for a period up to 60 days after June 30, 2011. The projections in Attachment A include estimates of these accruals. State statutes require that actual expenditures not exceed budget expenditures in any given fund. As such, the proposed expenditure budgets are higher than anticipated expenditures to ensure compliance. I'm going to step off here and say I don't understand why the state has that requirement. It kind of makes our final budget almost a meaningless. But anyway, back on track here. Attachment B presents the final proposed revenue and expenditure budgets, fund transfers, and ending fund balance budgets for 2010-11. The revenues allocated for the teachers fund were inadequate to fund the teacher salaries and benefits, which are expended out of that fund. State statute permits school districts to transfer an amount up to the deficit in the special revenue or teachers fund from the fund balance of the general fund. DESE requires that equipment expenditures be recorded in the capital projects fund. But since the district operates food services as a kind of a standalone business enterprise, at the end of each year, any food service equipment purchases are transferred from food service fund to the capital projects fund via fund balance transfer. It's just an accounting thing to get everything aligned at the end of the year. The final budget allotment for 2010-11 is $277 million. And it's the recommendation that the board approves the revision of the 2010-11 expenditure budget of $277 million as presented on Attachment B and the Teachers Fund and Food Service transfers. And before you do that, if you'd look at Attachment A, I'm very pleased to report that we have added about $7.8 million to our fund balance, and that's comprised of the $70,000 that we started the year with. I had told the board at a previous board meeting that I anticipated revenues to exceed budget by about $4.2 million. Sales tax came in better. So we're looking at just under $4.4 million better than budget now on revenue. In addition, the board will recall that mid-year we reduced the expenditure budget by the $1.4 million. And then at the end of the year, we have about $1.9 million that is anticipated to be unspent, which is about 1% of the total budget. So you total all those up and they add up to the $7.8 million. Which would raise our operating fund balance to $28.5 million and put our fund balance percentage at just under 17%. Any questions?
Very impressive. Questions, Ms. Cowan?
Just for clarification, though, that 16.94%, that includes money from the bond, right? So.
No, that's operating, which does not include bond money.
Oh, that's operating?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought that's how we usually report it, and I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the grade boxes are our operating funds, general teachers and capital.
Well, I would just like to commend you and your staff and Dr. Ritter and really the entire staff for, I really see this as a collaborative effort during these tough times, to be creative on how we program and how we spend our money, to be very conservative with how we spend, and to end the year in a better financial place than we were last year. I think speaks very well of the leadership that we have, particularly financially. So thank you, Mr. Chodes. And, that's
In that light, if I may, and I thank you for that comment, but we're not out of the trenches yet. We still have, I think, 2 to 3 years that we have to be concerned about. So
I understand, but to be going,
this is awesome. Yes.
the fundraiser would be going up at those times versus down. I mean, I think just reflects a very conservative approach from this board, and reflecting, I think, what our community wants us to do, and that's to be very, conservative stewards of their money.
And it certainly makes us, I think, feel better approaching these other next 1 or 2 years of uncertainty with a strong fund balance. So, and I think our staff, the teachers and the staff, have taken some of the brunt of this, and I think hopefully it'll pay off in the long run. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the budget? Mr. Lee?
Second.
Mrs. Callan, that the Board of Education approve the revision of the 2010-11 expenditure budget of $277 million as presented on Attachment B in the Teachers Fund food service transfers. All right, Mr. Chodes, 8.21 next year.
Next year it is. The 2011-12 proposed operating budget was presented to the board at the May 10th budget work session. An updated budget was presented to the board at the May 24th board meeting. Subsequent to the May 24th meeting, a number of events have occurred which have impacted the budget. These include the governor reduced state transportation funding by $8 million. The governor reduced parents as teachers funding by $2 million. The board approved the soft drink contract. The board approved the custodial services contract, and Title II funding was reduced by 21%. This reduction resulted in moving from the Title II, or us having to move from the Title II budget to the operating budget, the 2 facilitator positions and 4 class size reduction teaching positions. Attachment A presents the 2011-12 operating revenue budget. Attachment B, the reductions in administrative positions. Attachment C, the reductions for the 11-12 budget. D represents the 2011-12 operating budget, and Attachment E presents the 2011-12 revenue and expenditure budgets for each fund. I'm not going to go through all the attachments because most of them are very similar to what the board has seen previously. If you will turn to the page that's titled 2011-12 Proposed Budget, June 28th, which is kind of the summary of the budget, you will see
what attachment's that in?
Pardon?
Which attachment is it? Is that the?
That is.
That's the action item. Is that
D.
D?
Does that one say 2011-12 proposed budget, June 28th at the?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The changes to this that have been made since this was last presented to the board, aside from what I mentioned on the revenue side, the board will recall that we had set $450,000 aside for future staffing needs. We've now, because we had to move the facilitator positions from Title II over to the operating budget, those are now identified on this page, and the future staffing needs has been reduced from that $450,000 down to $355,000. It's not exactly dollar for dollar because I like my ending number to be a nice round number, so I hope the board gives me some leniency on that. But so based on the proposed budget before you, we should end the year with an addition to the fund balance of $400,000.
Final projection that we just approved.
Correct. And At this time, administration is asking that the board approve the 2011-12 budget with total expenditures of $259 million and total revenues of $241 million, with an operating reserve increase of $400,000 and fund balance transfers necessary to bring teachers' fund balance to zero, and budget transfers not to exceed the approved operating budget. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Chose? Ms. Callan?
Could you explain, I know there's been some, you or someone else, I know there's been some reduction to support in Title I reading, I believe. I've heard from various sites. Can someone speak to where that's coming from and who that's impacting?
I can probably speak to some of that, and Dr. Harrell can assist too. But part of the reduction that we've experienced is a result of the ARA funding elimination from the federal level. Over the past 2 years, the district has received substantial federal support for title and other programs through that funding source. That money has gone away this year, so that's resulted in some elimination of instructional positions, both support and in the classroom.
How many people is that, and how many sites is that impacting?
I have, I can give you an idea of people. I don't have the number of sites.
Okay, yeah, just general FTEs.
We hired over the past 2 years approximately 70 teachers with federal ARA funds and about the same number of paras, 67 paraprofessionals. We've been, fortunately, because of the way that we structured that hiring process and their initial contracts for those probationary employees, able to retain a substantial percentage of those as a part of the district's operating revenue.
Okay, so just in layman's terms, that money was the stimulus money, right? That
That's
people
correct.
would understand that. So for 2 years, we had federal stimulus money that was specifically targeted to school districts, and some of that specifically targeted to Title I schools. And we were able to, and had to staff certain positions with that money. We didn't have flexibility to use it as we wanted to. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And so those, in general, are the positions. If somebody tells me my reading aide is lost their job, or our reading teacher has lost their position, that's likely what's happening?
In all likelihood, yes,
Okay.
that's exactly the case.
And I can't see you, but I can hear you over there. And the people that signed those contracts knew that. And the buildings that had those people knew that those positions were funded by that stimulus, to use that era money,
Yeah.
but it's stimulus money. Everybody knew that.
That's correct.
So this was not a surprise to anybody. It's just that 2 years ago it seemed like a real good idea, hoping that it would, something else would happen to do it, and it really didn't. So I mean, I really don't think this was a surprise to anybody. It's just when it actually happened, people don't want it to happen. I understand that, but it's my understanding everything was done correctly on contracts and notifying everybody, and when they signed those contracts, they knew that, and we're trying to do the best we can with the money we now have, and it just doesn't stretch because it was a significant amount of money. I don't remember the amount now, so I don't want to quote it, but
6 million?
I think
millions.
I think it was like 11 million over 2 years.
Yeah, over 2
11
years.
million over 2 years, and you don't replace that just so.
But for those 2 years, we were able to employ people, and we were able to provide what I understand very valuable services to students, and those services and that kind of individualized attention that those students in need received will be gone. And so I think that those are important points to make too. It's not just, something that we liked to have, and it was, I understand that those positions made a real impact on many of the students that they worked with. So, but that's the good part of grants or earmarked money, and that's the bad part. So.
Just have one follow-up question. So it's safe to say that everyone that, or any positions that were eliminated were those that were hired the 2 years ago, so they were aware it was a 2-year.
They could have been hired the first year or the second year of the ARA funding.
Okay.
Lee.
A question on revenue projections for next year. And I know your conservative, extremely conservative nature with respect to that. And I was looking at the state funding from this year to next year, the $40 million to $47 million. You see what I'm talking about?
It's on the
which 2011, 2012 revenue projections.
majority of it is.
Okay, I'm looking at 2011-12 revenue projections.
The total state is 40 million and next
total
year's 47.
state.
Total
Okay.
state.
Okay.
My question is, and I know your conservative nature on that one, that's 17 or 18% increase of state funding.
Well, it's the stimulus. It's the trickery there. If you look down at line 5422, the $6 million there. In the.
Gotcha.
DESE required us to record it
Comes and goes.
down there.
Okay. The shell game.
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
at
right.
the top.
I didn't.
Not our
Oh, no, I
shell
was
game.
not projecting a
look for it.
$7 million
I thought-
increase in.
I'm not real comfortable seeing the state funding increase that much for next year.
Right.
It's like the foundation formula. In at the top, out at the bottom.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Mr. Chodas? Great. Well, I know it's certainly been a year of uncertainty, and you and your staff have coped with it well. I would listen for a motion to, let me get the wording correct, to approve the preliminary 2011-2012 budget.
So moved.
Mrs. Callan?
Second.
Mr. Lee, that the Board of Education approve the preliminary 2011-12 budget, total expenditures of $259,030,000, total revenues of $241,030,000, with an operating reserve increase of $400,000, fund balance transfers to bring the teacher's fund balance to zero, and budget transfers not to exceed the approved operating budget. I'm not going to say it again. Thank you very much. And while you're there, Mr. Chodas, 8.22, the Treasurer's Report.
Well, let's see. We've just approved the final 10-11 budget and next year's budget. This is somewhat of a letdown. I don't intend to go into any details on this. It's the May Treasurer's Report. It's my projections say it all. Let's put it that way.
I'll take a motion that the Board approve the Treasurer's Report as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty. Mr. Renner. Thank you very much. You're done. Yeah. 9.01, if there are no changes to the following action items, we may choose to approve these in one motion. That the Board approve each of the routine action items as submitted.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
Mrs. Dr. Frederick, thank you. Coming? I suspect we could have a voice vote on that if it doesn't come.
Yeah, I was going to say we've exceeded our vote.
Your allotment for the night is over.
Why don't we start with Mr. Renner on a voice vote?
Aye.
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 10.01, comment comments from the public of a general nature. I think we have one speaker tonight. The Board of Education allows comments on topics not related to the printed agenda, limited to 3 minutes in time. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or staff members by name in open meeting. I think you've heard that before. Mr. Hurd, you're up.
Dr. Prater, members of the board, and Dr. Ritter, thank you for the 3 minutes. However, your website, as I checked it last night, says members of the public have 5 minutes, so you might need to do a little homework there.
They do for specific agenda items. So if you'll check that, specific agenda items have 5 minutes and general comments have 3 minutes.
Fine. I'm here to bring your attention to the Hickory Hills old school sale thereof. And I'm wondering why it wasn't on the agenda tonight. Maybe it's because it's a closed session topic. But however, the reason I'm concerned about it is on June the 15th, the developer missed his $2 million down payment. And so that puts that right into your ballpark of deciding what to do with this situation. So I have a few comments. The whole nature of the Hickory Hills thing is it costs $20 million to build the new Hickory Hills, and you're attempting to sell it for less than $5 million. That's a $15 million red ink that this district could have definitely used, but you are where you are. So I'm just thinking that you need to take a tough position on dealing with this. It's easy to cave in and show desperation on wanting to sell this building, but you don't have to sell it at this particular time. So you could take a tough stance on dealing with this missed payment. And so it's up to you, but consider that how cheaply you're selling it. The best value of property is the older properties. And that is a building that should have a lot of life, and to see it torn down is kind of a sad thing. So I'm just wanting to get you to think about what your stand is or will be on dealing with this. I would like for you to check out the financial standings of the developer. See, we've gone through this with hers, and Mr. McGowan didn't have as good a record as people first thought. This developer has the one on the west bypass in Chestnut. Looks pretty good. He has some blank ground and Battlefield, and then he has the Hickory Hills. It's entirely possible that he could be overextended. So I think I'm out of time. So I would, don't give away Hickory Hills. Don't extend this contract is my suggestion. Have patience. The good things will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any legislative report to provide tonight?
You all received, I believe, a summary from Mr. Mars from last year's legislative report. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. I'm sorry? I don't, well, also, I don't know if they're going to go back or not. I think that's questionable, and that's between the governor and the leaders of the House and the Senate. And so there's a lot of indecision there. And both parties, both sides, feel that they should be able to come up with some kind of an agreement before they bring anybody back, or if they will bring them back. So that's undecided right now. So
I might just make, hopefully in the next week or so or whatever, we'll be sending out legislative resolutions from MSBA to the board for if there's anything we want to change or if there's any resolutions that we'd like MSBA to move forward. just for your comments over the next week or so. So take a look at the resolutions that MSBA's got. If we need to tweak them or add some or whatever, let us know, and we can get those put in for the delegate assembly in September.
And you need those back by
July 11th.
Well, this Friday. No.
Well, no, it needs to be the MSBA July 11th.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And like you said, Kathy will send those out tomorrow.
future issues. Anybody have any future issues other than Mrs. Luton's impending grandchild?
I was just going to say that, yes.
On Friday, correct? Good.
And that's why she's got to do it tomorrow and get out of here.
Any other business?
I just want to, go ahead.
I think, if I remember right, the timing of our last meeting was the week right before the MSBA summer meeting, in which Mr. Lee was elected to president-elect of MSBA. So on behalf of our board, I'd like to congratulate you, and it's a really great organization that is working hard on our behalf. And to get the legislative update from that organization, and to hear the kind of legislation that we were able to, or possible legislation that we were able to defeat this year, or to keep from coming to even floor votes. Those of us who are aware of the changing political climate in Missouri, of where several special interests, particularly one special interest person who has an incredible amount of money, is trying to change the political climate and really the philosophy of how we do business in the state, and to think that from a grassroots level we were able to really defeat some of those initiatives is a real tribute to Missouri School Boards Association. And so, Mr. Lee, I know you have your hands full the next couple years, but we wish you well.
And thank you for serving too as a delegate.
Welcome. It's a good organization.
Ritter?
I have a couple things on Joplin. I was with Joplin people the last couple days, asked them what they really needed, and they said that what they need more than anything right now is furniture and equipment around furniture. So we will stay legal, but there are some things that we can share or help them with on that. So as far as surplus and things, and so that is one thing. Another thing is they are calling for a meeting of all the area districts because they're trying to find their kids. They think a lot of their kids are going to end up in other districts, and so the state and the districts are trying to figure out how to best manage that. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes to fruition. And I think they're going to have that meeting within the next week. And so there's no way we know. But I do think they want to talk about a process. C.J. Huff, the superintendent, really is trying to get ahead of this a little bit because where the tornado hit, and this is the assistant superintendent said this to me yesterday, where the tornado hit is where most of the kids live. And so it's really hard for them to determine how many kids they have. And so they did find them, but they're all over Southwest Missouri, into Kansas and Oklahoma. So those are the two areas where we're going to participate and get involved. They're still working hard, and I do think they're going to go with the first day of school, August 17th. And so what's happening is, by the way, across the nation, the sign in front of the high school has the OP, and then it put an H in front of it and an E behind it. A student did that, and that's being a picture that's being shared across the country right now. And so it's kind of a neat way to approach that whole scenario. But I just want you to know we do have all of our sites before the end of the school year contributed, and I think I can see sites already starting to collaborate with sites, elementary sites. In fact, there's a site very similar to Campbell Elementary, and there's a lot of sharing that's going on between those two sites as well. So that's just an example. So anyway, just a report on that.
Could we have, I know it was really an amazing amount of money that was raised. In fact, when I was at the MSBA meeting, and that was just after school got out, several of their staff members commented to me about the level of support that was coming from the Springfield district. And so I think that might be nice to recognize at the board level, maybe not individual, but just in general, how much was raised. And I know there's going to be the opportunity to adopt a classroom,
right,
and to help teachers rebuild their supplies. And I think there might be a way for us, maybe even as a board, to consider doing something. Or I think that would be a nice gesture.
Yep. Okay.
Keep us posted.
I just wanted to mention, in June, first part of June, we had the new Frontiers Educational Conference, and I had the opportunity to attend that on Thursday and Friday, and it was very inspiring because our Springfield Public Schools well represented at that conference. I think our professional development and our curriculum instruction staff were there helping with all the aspects of the conference, and I have a feeling without that assistance it probably would not have been as well organized. So congratulations to our staff that did a terrific job assisting Borough with that conference.
Primarily Pam Hankins, who retires in a couple days. Oh, that's going to be painful for her.
Your financial operations report is attached on your plus deltas. If you would please comment on the voting system. We've had 2 runs of it now, a huge improvement on the second one. We'll be thinking long-term about how we'd like to do that. And we do need to have an executive session following this meeting to discuss legal real estate personnel matters as provided in Section 610.21, 1, 2, 3, and 13 RSMO. And I would take a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Mrs. Callan?
Second.
Mrs. Twitty? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Get a vote.
Roll call.
Did you vote on that?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, did you already? Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Gone.
It's gone. Oh, okay.
Gotta
All gone.
get used to that.
Unanimous, I vote.
It's
Thank you very much. That was a lot of
Or-
what you